Chosen one, pay close attention. Look at what's actually happening right now. The same people who called you lowly, who wouldn't say your name without a smirk attached to it, who decided you were beneath their attention and told everyone else to think the same way. Those same people are not fighting you anymore. They are fighting each other. Over you. Over who gets to stand closest to you. Over who gets to say they always believed in you. Over who gets the honor of kneeling down and tying your shoes while the others watch and wait their turn. Let that land before you scroll past it. This isn't a small shift in mood. This is a full collapse of the order they built their whole identity around. They spent years deciding your worth for you, ranking you below people who never earned the right to rank anyone. They did it in group chats. They did it in meetings you weren't invited to. They did it with a laugh that traveled faster than any defense you could have offered. And you let them talk. Not because you agreed with them, but because you already knew something they didn't. Worth doesn't need a vote to be real. They called you lowly, like it was a fact. Instead of an opinion, they were too lazy to check. They said it in front of others so it would spread faster. They said it behind your back so it would sound truer. And for a while, it worked. You watched doors close that should have opened. You watched rooms go quiet the second you walked in, not out of respect, out of dismissal. That kind of rejection doesn't just sting once. It sits in you. It becomes the voice you have to argue with every morning before you can function. But here's what they never accounted for. Rejection doesn't erase value. It just delays the moment everyone else finds out. And that moment is here now. Before we go further, hit like and subscribe so this message reaches the next chosen one who needs to hear it before they give up on themselves. It costs you nothing, and it keeps this whole mission alive. Now watch what's unfolding. The exact people who wrote you off are now circling back, not with apologies, with applications. They are lining up. They are competing. They are elbowing each other out of the way for a fraction of your attention. And the whole thing would almost be funny if it wasn't so revealing. Because this is what happens every single time someone underestimates a person the universe already marked as valuable. The correction doesn't come quiet. It comes loud, public, and impossible to unsee. And chosen one, you are standing in the middle of that correction right now, whether you've fully noticed it yet or not. Think back to the version of you they thought they were dealing with. Someone who would just absorb it. Someone who'd shrink a little more every time the room decided you were worth less than the space you occupied. They built an entire social order on that assumption, and they never once considered what happens when the assumption turns out to be wrong. What happens is exactly this. The floor they were standing on, the one made out of your silence, your patience, your refusal to fight back on their terms, gives out from underneath them, and there's no warning before it happens. There's just a before and an after, and everyone left standing in the after has to explain why they were so confident about the before. Every single one of them had a version of this story where they got to keep being right about you forever, where the room stayed exactly the way it was, where you stayed exactly where they placed you and never asked the room to reconsider. That version is gone now. It isn't coming back, and what's replacing it is something none of them scripted, something none of them approved, something that's unfolding entirely on your terms, whether they're ready for it or not. If you feel this one in your chest already, drop a 77 in the comments, so I know you're locked in for what comes next, because we are about to break this down piece by piece, and none of it is going to feel small. Number 1. The day the ranking flipped and nobody announced it. There was no meeting where they voted to change their minds about you, no apology tour, no formal correction, no headline. That's not how a real reversal works. It happens the way a temperature changes in a room, quietly, until suddenly everyone is dressed wrong for the weather. One day, you were the name people used as a punchline. The next day, Without any single dramatic event you can point to, you were the name people used carefully, like it might matter who heard them say it wrong. Think about how strange that actually is. Nobody sent out a memo saying, "We were mistaken. This person actually matters." Nobody stood up and corrected the record out loud. And yet the behavior changed anyway. That's not a coincidence. That's what happens when reality catches up to a lie that people were only repeating because it was convenient, not because it was true. The moment convenience runs out, so does the lie. Here's the part that should sit with you. The people who called you lowly were never actually measuring you. They were measuring how safe it felt to say it. It costs nothing to insult someone who has no leverage, no reach, no room full of people who remember who said what. It costs everything to insult someone once the room shifts and your name suddenly carries weight in places they can't control. That's the whole secret behind their sudden politeness. It was never about who you became. It was about what they can no longer afford to lose. Picture two people standing at the edge of a frozen lake. One of them insults the other, confident the ice will hold no matter what happens next. Then the ice cracks under the one who was mocking, not the one being mocked, and suddenly the tone of the entire conversation changes in half a second. That's what's happening to them right now. The ground shifted. They felt it before they understood it. And the scramble you're watching, the sudden warmth, the sudden interest, the sudden memory of always believing in you, that's not respect arriving late. That's panic wearing a nicer outfit. You didn't ask for the flip. You didn't campaign for it. You didn't beg anyone to reconsider their opinion of you. You just kept existing, kept building, kept refusing to shrink into the shape they assigned you, and the shape broke on its own. That's the part they'll never say out loud, because saying it means admitting they were wrong about someone they treated like they were nothing. And people who built their comfort on being right about everyone else do not enjoy admitting that. Here's what makes it worse for them. A quiet correction is far more damaging to a reputation than a loud one, because a loud correction can be argued with, deflected, spun into a story where there's still the reasonable one. A quiet correction can't be argued with at all. There's no headline to dispute, no public statement to counter, just a slow accumulation of evidence that keeps piling up in your favor until denial simply stops being an option. That's the version they're living through right now, and it's the version they have the least ability to fight back against. Number 2. Why they're not coming back for you, they're coming back for proximity. Here's something you need to hear clearly before you let any of them back into your peace. This isn't loyalty walking through the door, it's proximity. There's a difference, and the difference matters more than anything else in this whole story. Loyalty shows up when it costs something. Proximity shows up the moment it becomes profitable. What you're watching right now, the sudden interest, the sudden warmth, the sudden memory of always seeing something special in you, that's proximity dressed up in loyalty's clothes. And if you look closely, you can tell them apart every time. They didn't miss you as a person. They missed the version of the story where they get to say they knew you before everyone else did. That sentence is worth something to them now. It wasn't worth anything when you actually needed someone to say it. Notice that. Sit with it. The timing tells you everything the words never will. Imagine a lottery winner walking down a street they used to walk unnoticed, and suddenly every acquaintance from a decade ago is calling to catch up. Nobody believes those calls are really about friendship, and you shouldn't believe this is really about you either. It's about access. It's about being close enough to the outcome to claim a piece of it later. Cold calculations dressed up as warm memories. They are not fighting each other for the honor of caring about you. They're fighting each other for a seat that got a lot more valuable once everyone else noticed it existed. And the ones pushing hardest to be first in line are very often the ones who pushed hardest to keep you out of the room in the first place. That's not irony. That's the pattern repeating itself in a different costume. You don't owe any of them a seat just because they finally want one. You get to decide who earns proximity now, and earning it means something different than simply showing up once the outcome looks good. It means they were there in the version of your story where nothing was guaranteed yet. Most of them weren't. Remember that the next time one of them acts like distance was never their choice. There's a simple test that separates real loyalty from opportunistic proximity, and you already know it even if you've never said it out loud. Ask what they risked, not what they're offering now that risk is gone. What they actually risked back when standing near you still cost them something. Most of them will fail that test instantly, because the honest answer is nothing. They risked nothing, they lost nothing, and now they're hoping enthusiasm can substitute for the sacrifice they never made. It can't. It never will. Real closeness was always going to require more than good timing. You can be warm to people without handing them access. Those are two different postures, and you're allowed to hold both at once. Warmth costs you nothing. Access costs you everything if it's given to the wrong person. And right now you're surrounded by a crowd that hasn't earned the second thing yet, no matter how convincingly they're performing the first. Number 3. The shoes they refuse to look at are the same ones they're chasing now. There's a particular kind of humiliation reserved for people who spent years looking past you and are now bent over, trying to get close to the ground you walk on. Nobody bothered to notice your shoes when you were the one they dismissed. They didn't look down because they never looked at you long enough to notice anything below your face, and even that got minimal attention. You were background to them, furniture in a room they thought they owned. Now the same eyes that skipped over you are fixed on the ground beneath your feet, competing over who gets close enough to matter. That reversal isn't poetic exaggeration. It's the literal shape of what status flips look like once they finally happen. The thing that was invisible becomes the thing everyone wants proximity to, and the humiliation isn't that they're bowing, it's that they're bowing to something they swore had no value at all. Imagine a room full of people arguing over a painting they used to walk past without a glance, now suddenly convinced it's the most important piece in the building because someone finally told them what it was worth. Nothing about the painting changed, only their awareness of it did. That's them. That's exactly them. They are not competing to serve you because they suddenly developed character. They're competing because being close to something valuable makes them feel valuable by association. And that's always been the actual engine behind their behavior. When you were low in their eyes, standing near you cost them something socially. Now that you're not, standing near you pays them something socially. The math changed. Their feelings didn't. You get to watch this unfold with a strange kind of calm, because you already know what none of them will ever admit. You were never actually lowly. You were only ever underpriced by people who didn't understand what they were looking at. And underpriced things don't stay underpriced forever. Eventually the correction comes, and everyone who missed it the first time spends the rest of their life pretending they saw it coming. Watch how differently they walk when they're near you now, compared to how they used to walk past you. There's a carefulness in it, a hesitation that wasn't there before, because now they're aware that how they show up in this moment might be remembered later. That awareness alone is its own kind of confession. You don't accidentally become careful around someone you genuinely believe is beneath you. Carefulness is what shows up right after certainty gets replaced with fear of being wrong in public. Number 4. The silence that used to be called weakness is now being studied like a manual. They called your silence weakness once. They called it proof you had nothing to say, nothing to offer, nothing worth the room's attention. That story was convenient for them because it let them talk over you without consequence. Silence, to people who don't understand it, always looks like an empty room. But silence built on actual substance isn't empty. it's loaded. And eventually, everyone standing near it figures that out the hard way. Now watch what's happening. The same silence they mocked is being replayed in their heads, like they're trying to find the moment they missed something important. They're studying your old restraint, the way people study a move they didn't see coming in a game they thought they understood. How did they stay that calm? How did they never break? How did they know something we didn't? Those questions don't get asked about people who actually had nothing behind their quiet. Picture someone standing in a museum, staring at a locked door they used to walk past without a second thought, suddenly desperate to know what's behind it, now that they've heard it's worth something. That's what your old silence has become to them. A locked door they regret never trying to open properly. And the frustrating part for them is that the door was never locked out of spite. It was locked because they hadn't earned the key, and most of them still haven't. You don't owe anyone access just because they finally noticed there was something behind the quiet. Silence that was mocked and misunderstood doesn't automatically become public property the moment people change their opinion of it. You get to decide who gets let in now, slowly, carefully, and only after they've proven the interest is real, and not just curiosity dressed up as respect. The truth is simple, even if it stings them. Your silence was never about having nothing to say. It was about knowing exactly who deserved to hear it. And for a long time, almost none of them did. There's something almost ironic about people studying silence the way they're studying yours now, because the entire reason it worked in the first place was that it never needed to be understood to be effective. It didn't require their approval to function. It didn't require an audience to have weight. And now that they're trying to reverse engineer it, trying to figure out the formula behind something that was never a formula to begin with, they're discovering the uncomfortable truth that some things can't be copied. They can only be earned, the same slow way you earned yours. That's why the imitations always fall flat. You'll start seeing people try on a version of your old restraint, a practiced stillness, a calculated quiet, hoping it reads the same way yours does. It never quite lands, because the room can feel the difference between silence that's genuinely rooted in something and silence that's just a costume borrowed for the occasion. Yours was never a performance. Theirs almost always is. Number 5. Why the ones who stayed quiet are panicking harder than the ones who spoke against you. Here's a truth that rarely gets said out loud in these situations, but it needs to be said plainly. The people scrambling hardest right now aren't always the ones who insulted you directly. Some of the loudest panic is coming from the ones who said nothing while it happened. The ones who watched the room call you lowly and decided the safest move was silence. They didn't throw the punches, but they didn't block a single one either. And now that the story has flipped, their inaction is starting to look exactly like what it always was. A choice. Silence in the face of someone else's mistreatment was never neutral. It was a decision dressed up as caution. And now, those same quiet bystanders are the ones scrambling fastest to be seen standing near you, because deep down, they know their old silence won't hold up under any real scrutiny. They know if anyone ever asks what they did while you were being dismissed, the honest answer is nothing, and nothing is not a good look once the truth becomes public property. Imagine a group standing near a burning building, and afterward, the ones who ran in to help are easy to spot. So are the ones who filmed it for entertainment. But the hardest ones to identify later are the ones who simply stood there and said nothing while it happened, because their inaction blends into the background of everyone else's noise. Until someone starts asking questions. And once questions start, silence stops being invisible. That's what's happening to them now. The questions have started, and the ones who thought staying quiet would keep them safe are discovering that quiet cowardice ages just as badly as loud cruelty. Worse even, because at least the loud ones had the nerve to be honest about what they thought of you. You don't have to forgive the silence just because it's uncomfortable for them now. You get to remember exactly who spoke up for you when it cost them nothing to stay quiet, and who didn't. That memory is yours to keep, and it's more accurate than any apology they're rehearsing right now. Notice too how many of the quiet ones are the loudest defenders of the reversal now, the first to comment, the first to share, the first to publicly celebrate what's happening for you. That performance isn't for you. It's for everyone else watching, a way of rewriting their own record in real time before anyone thinks to ask what they actually did while it mattered. You're allowed to see the performance for what it is without making it your job to correct it out loud. Let them perform. You already have the receipts memory keeps for free. Number 6. The competition nobody invited them to. Watch closely, because this part is almost comedic if you let yourself see it clearly. Nobody sent out invitations for this new competition they've entered. You didn't announce open positions. You didn't post a sign-up sheet for who gets to matter to you now. They created this race entirely on their own, out of pure panic, because the alternative, being left out entirely, is more frightening to them than anything else they can imagine. They are watching each other more than they're watching you at this point. Who got a reply first? Who got tagged in your comment section? Who managed to mention knowing you before it was relevant? It's not admiration driving this. It's fear of being the one left standing outside the circle once everyone else claims their spot inside it. Status anxiety, disguised as sudden loyalty, and if you watch long enough, you can see the mask slipping every single time. Imagine a group of people who ignored a well for years, until word got out that the well had struck something valuable underground. Suddenly, everyone wants to be seen standing closest to it, not because they care about water, but because standing near value makes people feel like they have some claim to it. That's the entire competition you're watching unfold. It was never about you as a person. It's about proximity as currency. You get to watch this with total detachment, because none of it requires anything from you. You don't have to referee their competition. You don't have to hand out rankings. You don't have to explain who's allowed closer and who isn't. The most powerful thing you can do right now is simply keep living your life at the pace you were already living it, and let the scramble sort itself out without your involvement. Chaos organizes itself eventually. You don't need to be the one managing it. And here's the quiet satisfaction underneath all of it. The competition itself is the proof. You don't compete for something worthless. Nobody fights over furniture nobody wants. The fact that they're fighting each other for a fraction of your attention is the clearest evidence available that the label they gave you years ago was never accurate. It was just cheap, and cheap opinions don't survive contact with the truth for very long. You might notice something else if you pay close attention. The ones competing loudest rarely make eye contact for long. There's a flicker of something underneath the enthusiasm, a discomfort they can't quite hide, because some part of them knows exactly what this competition reveals about who they actually are. It reveals that their opinion of you was never really about you. It was always about convenience, about safety in numbers, about following whatever direction the room happened to be facing that day. That's not admiration. That's a weather vane, and weather vanes don't deserve credit for pointing wherever the wind blows. Weather vanes are useful for exactly one thing, and it isn't loyalty. They tell you which direction the wind is currently blowing, nothing more. Keep that function in mind the next time one of them spins toward you enthusiastically. You're not watching devotion, you're watching a reading on an instrument, and instruments change their reading the second conditions change again. Number 7. Why apologies are showing up now and not a year ago. Timing tells the truth, even when words don't. An apology that arrives the moment it becomes safe to give is a very different thing than an apology that arrives while it still carries risk. Real remorse doesn't wait for the weather to change before it speaks up. Real remorse shows up while things are still uncertain, while there's still something to lose by admitting fault. What you're receiving now, most of it, arrived only after the outcome was already visible to everyone. That doesn't mean every single word is worthless. It means you're allowed to weigh it against the calendar. Ask yourself plainly, would this person have said any of this a year ago, when saying it might have cost them something socially? If the honest answer is no, then what you're looking at isn't remorse. It's risk management wearing remorse's face, and you're allowed to notice the difference without being called bitter for noticing it. Picture someone who ignores a stranded car on the side of the road for miles, only to stop and offer help the second they realize a camera crew is filming the scene. The help might technically arrive, but nobody watching believes it was ever really about the person stranded. It was about being seen, doing the right thing, once doing the right thing became visible. That's the shape of a lot of these apologies. Late, convenient, and aimed more at their own reputation than at your actual well-being. You're allowed to accept an apology and still remember exactly when it arrived. Those two things aren't contradictory. Grace doesn't require amnesia. You can let someone back into a version of your life without pretending the timing wasn't telling. And if their apology is real, it will survive you remembering the timing. If it isn't, that memory is exactly what will make them disappear again the moment the spotlight moves somewhere else. There's a quiet way to test any apology without ever confronting the person who gave it. Just wait. Real remorse holds steady whether anyone is watching or not. Convenient remorse fades the moment attention shifts to someone else's story. You don't need to interrogate anyone or demand proof of sincerity. Time does that work for free, and it does it more accurately than any conversation ever could. Because people can perform words for a few minutes. Almost nobody can perform consistency for months without something real underneath it. Number 8. The room that used to go quiet when you walked in now goes quiet for a different reason. There was a version of your life where a room going silent when you entered meant dismissal. It meant conversations pausing because nobody wanted to be caught saying something unkind out loud. It meant a kind of quiet that stung because you knew exactly what it was covering up. That silence had a temperature to it, and it was cold. Now the silence means something else entirely, and the shift in meaning is one of the most satisfying parts of this whole story. Rooms still go quiet when you walk in, but it's not dismissal anymore. It's recalibration. People stop mid-sentence, not because they're hiding an insult, but because they're suddenly aware of who's listening. The pause used to be about you not mattering. Now the pause is about you mattering more than they're prepared for. Imagine walking into a courtroom before a verdict and after one. Before the verdict, the room is full of casual noise, side conversations, people who haven't decided how seriously to take what's happening. After the verdict, the same room goes still the moment the person at the center of it walks back in, not because anything about that person's body changed, but because their standing in that room changed completely. Same person, different silence. That's exactly what you're walking into now, every single time. Same face, same voice, same walk you've always had. But the silence that greets you has flipped its meaning entirely, and everyone in the room feels it, even if nobody says it directly. You don't have to explain the shift. You don't have to acknowledge it. You just have to keep walking through those rooms exactly the way you always did. Calm, unhurried, unbothered. Because that consistency is exactly what makes the new silence feel so heavy to the people sitting inside it. It's worth naming what that heaviness actually is, because it isn't fear of you exactly. It's discomfort with themselves. Every time the room goes quiet in that new way, it forces a brief, involuntary reckoning, a flash of the version of them that stayed silent or joined in when it would have cost nothing to do the opposite. You don't have to remind anyone of that moment. Their own nervous system does it for you. Every single time you walk through a doorway, they used to consider unremarkable. Some of them will overcompensate for that discomfort by getting louder, friendlier, almost performative in how warmly they greet you now. Don't mistake volume for resolution. A person genuinely at peace with their own past behavior doesn't need to broadcast their enthusiasm quite this hard. The ones truly comfortable with how they treated you simply wouldn't need to prove anything to you at all. Number 9. They can fight over your attention, but they can't manufacture your trust. Here's something worth saying clearly, because it's easy to get swept up in the noise of everyone suddenly wanting closeness to you. Attention and trust are not the same currency, and no amount of competition for the first one buys any of the second. They can fight each other for a reply, a mention, a moment of your time, and still walk away with absolutely none of your trust, because trust was never something you handed out for free even before any of this happened. Trust gets built the slow way, through consistency during the boring stretches when nobody's watching, through showing up during the version of your story that wasn't impressive yet, through choosing you when choosing you carried zero social benefit. None of the people currently competing for your attention did that, and competing loudly now doesn't retroactively rewrite what they failed to do then. Imagine a bank that only accepts one specific currency and a crowd showing up with a completely different currency, insisting loudly that it should count anyway because there's a lot of it. That's what's happening here. They're showing up with enthusiasm, attention, sudden interest, in bulk, expecting it to be exchangeable for trust. It isn't. It was never going to be. Trust has its own exchange rate, and volume doesn't move it. You get to enjoy the attention if you want to, or ignore it entirely if you'd rather, without feeling obligated to convert any of it into closeness. Being wanted by a crowd of people who rejected you first isn't the same as being valued by people who never needed convincing. Keep that distinction sharp, because it's the only thing standing between you and getting fooled by volume dressed up as sincerity. This is also where a lot of people trip themselves up on the way back from rejection. They spent so long starving for acknowledgement that the first wave of attention feels like it must mean something deeper than it does. It doesn't have to. You're allowed to enjoy being noticed without confusing it for being known. Those are two entirely different experiences, and only one of them is worth rearranging your life around. Number 10. The ones who called it luck are the ones who understand it least. There will always be a portion of the crowd who explains away what's happening to you as luck, timing, an algorithm, a fluke, anything except the plain truth that you built something real while they were busy underestimating you. Calling it luck lets them avoid the harder conclusion that they misjudged you completely, and that misjudgment says more about their perception than it ever said about your worth. Luck doesn't explain years of quiet consistency while nobody was watching. Luck doesn't explain staying steady through rejection that would have flattened someone with less foundation. Luck doesn't build the kind of character that draws real interest once people finally look closely enough to see it. What you're standing in isn't a lucky break. It's the compound result of every moment you refused to become what they said you were. Picture two farmers standing at the edge of a field. One planted years ago and tended it quietly through every difficult season. The other walks by during the 1 week the harvest is visible and calls it luck that the field is full. The farmer who actually did the work knows better than to argue. The field speaks for itself, and eventually, so does the harvest. Let them call it luck if that's the story that lets them sleep at night. You don't need their accurate account of what happened to you in order for it to be real. Their confusion about the cause doesn't change the outcome sitting right in front of them, the outcome they're currently competing to get close to. There's a certain peace that comes from no longer needing anyone to correctly explain what happened to you. Early on, It might have mattered whether they understood. It might have felt important that they finally saw the truth clearly and said so out loud. But truth doesn't actually need a witness to remain true, and your story doesn't need their accurate narration in order to keep unfolding exactly the way it's meant to. Let them call it luck. The field keeps growing either way. There's an odd comfort in being underestimated by people who never watered a single row. It means the next season, and the one after that, will keep surprising them in exactly the same way, because they still won't understand the process, only the results. And results without an understanding of the process always look like magic to the people standing outside of it. Number 11. Why some of them will never actually apologize and why that's fine. Not everyone who wronged you is going to say sorry, and it helps to make peace with that now, instead of waiting for a moment that may never come. Some people are constitutionally incapable of admitting fault, not because they don't know they were wrong, but because admitting it would require dismantling the version of themselves they've built their whole identity around. For those people, silence about the past is the closest thing to an apology you're ever going to receive, and you have to decide in advance that you don't need more than that to move forward. This isn't about excusing what they did. It's about refusing to let your peace depend on something you can't control. Waiting for a specific person to say specific words before you allow yourself to feel settled is handing them one more piece of power over your life, long after they've lost every other piece they used to have. Don't do that. Not after everything else has already shifted in your favor. Imagine standing at a locked gate, refusing to walk away from it because you're certain someone owes you the key. Meanwhile, the field behind you is wide open, unlocked, and completely available to walk through right now. The people who never apologize are that locked gate. Stop standing at it. There was never anything on the other side worth the wait. You can let their silence be their answer and still move forward with everything you've built. Closure isn't something someone else delivers to you in a neat little speech. Closure is something you decide for yourself the moment you stop needing their words to validate what you already know to be true. Some of them will spend years constructing a version of the past where they were never really that bad, where it was all a misunderstanding, where you're remembering it more harshly than it deserves. Let them build that story if it helps them sleep. You don't have to correct it, argue with it, or even acknowledge it. Their comfort with a false version of events isn't your responsibility to manage, and chasing them down to force accuracy only keeps you tethered to people who've already shown you exactly how little accuracy matters to them. Number 12. What actually earns a place near you now? Since everyone is suddenly competing for a spot close to you, it's worth being specific about what actually qualifies someone for that spot, because attention alone clearly doesn't. Neither does enthusiasm or nostalgia or a sudden claim of having always believed in you. What earns a place near you now is exactly what should have earned it all along. Consistency without an audience. Honesty when honesty isn't flattering. Showing up in the version of your life that isn't impressive yet, because there will always be another version of your life that isn't impressive yet, further down the road, and that's where you'll find out who's actually still standing. This standard isn't cruelty. It's clarity, and clarity is something you were denied for years while people got to define your worth without any accountability for being wrong. You get to set the terms now. You get to decide that proximity has to be earned the slow way, the same way trust always has to be earned, regardless of how loudly someone is currently competing for a spot at the front of the line. Imagine a garden that was neglected for years, suddenly attracting a crowd the moment it blooms, all of them wanting to pick the flowers without ever having watered anything. A garden that survives that kind of attention is one with a fence and a gate, letting in only the people willing to actually tend it going forward, not just admire it from a distance, now that it's finally worth admiring. Build that fence. Not out of bitterness, out of self-respect. The people worth keeping close will understand it immediately, because people with real character never resent being asked to prove something twice. Only the ones hoping to skip the line resent a standard, and their resentment tells you everything you need to know about which side of the fence they actually belong on. A fence isn't cruelty toward the people standing outside it. It's protection for what's growing inside it, and both things can be true at once without contradiction. You're not obligated to explain the fence to anyone who finds it inconvenient that closeness to you now requires patience they weren't willing to offer before, back when patience would have actually meant something. Setting that standard also tends to thin the crowd almost immediately, and that thinning is a feature, not a flaw. Watch how fast the competition quiets down the moment proximity requires patience instead of enthusiasm. The ones who vanish the second effort is required were never actually competing for closeness to you. They were competing for the appearance of closeness, something they could reference later without ever having to put in the work the reference implies. Good. Let the fence do exactly what a fence is supposed to do. Number 13. Why the loudest ones in the competition are often the most afraid of being right about you the whole time. There's a particular kind of person in every version of this story. The one who competes the hardest, talks the loudest, claims the closest history with you, and somewhere underneath all of it is running from a very specific fear. Not the fear of missing out on your success. The fear of what it would mean if they had actually been right about you from the beginning, and simply chose comfort over courage anyway. That fear is heavier than anything else driving this competition, because admitting it means admitting they knew better and did nothing with the knowledge. Think about how that works. It's one thing to have genuinely misjudged someone out of ignorance. It's a completely different thing to have suspected there was more to someone and stayed quiet anyway because speaking up wasn't socially convenient at the time. The second version doesn't get to call itself a mistake. It has to call itself a choice, and choices are much harder to forgive yourself for than honest errors ever are. Picture someone standing at the edge of a crowd who privately always thought a particular idea had merit, but stayed quiet while everyone else mocked it, only to watch that same idea succeed spectacularly once someone braver finally acted on it. The quiet doubter doesn't get to celebrate that success the same way the ones who genuinely never saw it coming get to celebrate it. There's a specific kind of grief buried in watching something succeed that you privately suspected would, and did nothing to support while it still needed support. That's what some of the loudest people in your new crowd are actually carrying right now, whether they'd ever say it plainly. Their volume isn't celebration, it's overcorrection, an attempt to drown out the quieter, harder truth that they knew better and chose the crowd instead of you. You don't need to expose that truth. You don't need to say a single word about it. It sits with them regardless, every time they clap the loudest for something they once refused to defend. There's a version of this that shows up in almost every reversal story. The friend of a friend who suddenly remembers defending you in conversations nobody else can verify. The acquaintance who claims they always said you had something different about you. Some of that is exaggeration. Some of it is outright invention, but underneath both, there's usually a kernel of the same fear driving it. The fear of being remembered as someone who stood on the wrong side of an obvious truth. You don't have to fact-check any of it out loud. Let the exaggeration exist. It's still a confession, just wearing a nicer sentence. Number 14. What you actually do with all of this now that it's finally here. It's easy to get so wrapped up in watching the reversal unfold that you forget to ask the more important question. What do you actually do with it? Vindication that isn't used for anything beyond enjoying the discomfort of people who wronged you eventually turns hollow, because discomfort in other people was never supposed to be the destination. It was only ever supposed to be proof along the way. evidence that you were right to keep going when everything around you suggested otherwise. Use this moment the way it deserves to be used. Not to punish anyone, not to hand out forgiveness like a reward for good behavior, but to finally stop asking permission from rooms that never deserved the authority to grant it in the first place. That's the real prize hiding underneath all of this. Not their attention, not their apologies, not their sudden competition for a place near you. The real prize is that you no longer need any of it to know exactly what you're worth. Imagine someone who spent years auditioning for approval from judges who were never actually qualified to score the performance, only to eventually realize the theater was empty the whole time, that the seats they were performing for were never filled with anyone whose opinion should have mattered that much. The moment that realization lands, the performance changes completely. You stop playing to the empty seats and start building something for its own sake, because that was always the only audience whose standard was ever real. Let the competition around you continue however it wants to continue. Let them fight over proximity, over apologies, over who gets to say they always believed. None of that requires your management, your energy, or your permission. What requires your attention now is simpler and quieter than anything happening around you. Keep building. Keep choosing people the slow, careful way. Keep walking through rooms exactly the way you always did, unhurried, because that unhurried walk was never a performance for them in the first place. It was just who you already were, long before anyone else noticed. There's a particular kind of freedom in that realization, one that doesn't get talked about enough in stories like this. Everyone focuses on the satisfaction of watching people scramble, and it's understandable, because there's real satisfaction in it. But the deeper freedom is quieter than that. It's the freedom of no longer performing for a jury that was never qualified to judge you, of no longer editing yourself down to fit inside rooms that couldn't hold your full size to begin with. That freedom doesn't come from their apology. It comes from you finally putting the verdict down and refusing to pick it back up again, no matter how loudly anyone else tries to hand it back to you. Number 15. The final shift, and why none of this needed their permission. Here's the part that closes the whole story, and it's worth sitting with all the way through. None of what happened to you required their permission, their apology, their recalculation, or their sudden interest. You didn't become valuable the moment they noticed. You were always this. Their noticing simply caught up to a fact that had been true the entire time, quietly, patiently, whether they were paying attention or not. That's the real humiliation buried underneath this entire reversal, and it's the part they'll never say plainly, even to themselves. They didn't create your worth by finally recognizing it. They just spent years being wrong about something that was true the whole time, and now they're competing with each other to be the first to pretend they always knew it. Nobody wants to be remembered as the one who called it lowly right, before everyone found out otherwise. Imagine a sealed room with a single window, and a group of people outside arguing loudly about what's inside, without ever bothering to look through the glass. Then one day, someone finally looks, gasps, and suddenly the whole crowd is pushing toward the window, desperate for a glance, acting as though they'd been curious all along. They weren't. They just didn't want to be the last ones to see what was obvious the entire time. You were never behind that glass waiting for permission to be worth something. You were simply living your life while they argued about a version of you that never actually existed. And now that the window is clear, now that they can finally see what was always there, the only thing left for them to do is compete for a look, a word, a moment, while you keep walking exactly the way you always did. Calm, unbothered, already knowing. This isn't revenge, and it was never meant to feel like one. Revenge requires you to still be fighting them. You're not fighting anyone anymore. You're simply living forward, while the people who misjudged you scramble to catch up to a truth they should have seen from the very beginning. Let them scramble. Let them compete. Let them fight over the honor of standing close to something they once called worthless. You don't need to say a single word about any of it. The silence they used to call weakness is the same silence that's about to finish telling this whole story for you. And years from now, when this stretch of your life gets told and retold, in your own memory if nowhere else, it won't be remembered as the time they finally admitted they were wrong. It'll be remembered as the time you kept walking anyway, at your own pace, on your own terms, without waiting for a single one of them to catch up first. That's the part that actually matters, not the applause arriving late, not the competition for a place near you. The plain, quiet fact that you never needed any of it to know exactly who you were the entire time. If this one hit exactly where it needed to hit, let me know the way you always do. Drop 77 in the comments so every other chosen one scrolling past knows the shift is real and it's already happening for them too. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't yet, and share it with someone who's still waiting for their own room to go quiet for the right reason instead of the wrong one. Thanks for watching, chosen one. We'll see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.